all about anxious attachment style. We'll talk about signs that you or your partner may have an anxious attachment style, how it develops, and how to heal your anxious attachment style to move towards earned secure attachment. Hey there, I'm Lauren. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in relationship and sex therapy. So let's get into it. Here's some of the classic kind of traits, signs, and behaviors of somebody with an anxious attachment style. The first that comes up is really this fear of abandonment, this kind of constant fear, worry that your partner is going to leave you, they're not going to think you're good enough, they don't love you anymore, that them even walking away. You may have a chronic fear or worry about abandonment, or that your partner is going to leave you, they don't love you anymore, you're not good enough for them, and they're going to leave, even on these really small things. And so what this can lead somebody with an anxious attachment style to do is really hyper focus on somebody else's emotions. So much so that they tend to disregard and dismiss their own feelings because they're more worried about whether their partner is happy, whether they're feeling good about the relationship, rather than checking in with themselves of like, do I actually feel good in this relationship? Do I like this person? So they're hyper focused, hyper aware on somebody else's emotions, and they're actually usually really good at also noticing small shifts in their partner's changes in emotions, these small things that most people wouldn't even notice. They're like, hey, I noticed this happened. What does that mean? And checking in with their partner over and over again, because it's that fear of, are you going to leave me? Are you going to be here for me? That fear of disconnection from their partner, that their partner is going to leave them or not be with them, or even just feeling disconnected, is terrifying and overwhelming, which is why there's that hypervigilance of checking in with their partner's emotions, wanting to make sure they're okay. How are you doing? Are you happy? Can we do anything better for you? Rather than, again, checking in with themselves and making sure that they're also happy in the relationship. During arguments, somebody with an anxious attachment style usually responds with really big emotions, which if they are with an avoidant partner can feel very, very overwhelming for them. They also tend to be someone who pursues. So they may move towards their partner. They may almost kind of pick fights with their partner to try and get some sort of reaction or response, because any response is better than no response. Because if you're responding to me, you're engaging, you're fighting with me, that means that on some level you still care, you're still in this with me, I need to know you're here with me. So they may tend to pick fights if there's moments, too many moments of calm. They may pursue their partner during arguments of like, we need to resolve this now, we need to figure this out, where are you going, I need you here with me, and just have overall kind of big emotional responses to conflicts or disagreements. They may also struggle with setting healthy boundaries for themselves and respecting the boundaries of others without taking it personally. Because remember, there's this huge fear of abandonment. Are you going to leave me? Are you going to be there for me? So I'm going to let you cross my boundaries because I want to make sure you're happy and you're going to stay here with me, because it's terrifying to think you're going to leave me. So that's where they struggle with setting boundaries. And if you set a boundary with them, it feels really personal because it activates that, oh, I'm not good enough, you're gonna leave, and where are you gonna go? And so it's really difficult to set and respect boundaries. Attachment is the strategies that we develop as children to keep our parents or caregivers close, because they are our safety. And the closer they are to us, the more likely we are to survive, because they're there to protect us. Now, an anxious attachment style can develop if your parent or caregiver is not consistently available. Sometimes they show up and have your back, and sometimes they're nowhere to be found. Sometimes they're emotionally present and available, and sometimes they're totally dismissive and disconnecting. So it can create this sense of anxiety of like, I don't know if parent or caregiver is going to be there, so how am I going to keep them close? It may also happen where the parent or caregiver does show up for the child, but is actually there really to get their own needs met, to seek comfort for themselves, regulate their own emotions, feel better about themselves. So it's not really about the child. The parent or caregiver isn't helping that child regulate their emotions, understand or process their emotions, and is more worried about their own, as the parent, their need to get comfort. Maybe they go to hug their kid because they want to hug, even if the kid's like, I don't want that at all. They're worried more about themselves or how they're presenting to the world. So they may be using their child more as kind of a show, like, okay, well, we need to present in this certain way, rather than really about what does my child need and how do I help them process and understand their experience. Anxious attachment might also come because the parent has no boundaries or steps over the child's boundaries, really struggles with setting those healthy boundaries, more concerned about themselves, and doesn't respect those of others. They may also struggle with regulating their own emotions. So the child is not seeing emotions modeled in a healthy way. The parent's all over the place, showing really big emotions they're not able to manage. So again, that parent may turn to that child in an inappropriate way to have that child manage their emotions, rather than really being with the child and helping them process and understand their emotion. One of the main ways that anxious attachment develops is having an inconsistently available parent or caregiver. That child doesn't know if their parent or caregiver is going to be available and show up for them. Sometimes they are emotionally available, and other times they're shut down or dismissive or withdrawn. And sometimes their parent does show up and is able to help them process through their emotions. And sometimes they're nowhere to be found. Or sometimes they'll show up and help them with their emotions, but it's really more about the parent processing their own emotions or getting comfort that they need, rather than helping that child organize and understand their experience and the emotions that they're feeling. So that child just doesn't know what they're gonna get. So there's this sense of anxiety, like, are you gonna be there? Are you not gonna be there? Are you gonna show up for me? I don't know. It can create a ton of insecurity in that child because they don't know if I'm going to be safe. So one strategy that a child with an anxious attachment style can develop is showing big emotions. I'm just going to keep showing big emotions because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes they show up. So if I show some emotions, maybe that'll bring my parent or caregiver closer to me, so at least I feel that sense of safety. So I'm going to keep showing these big emotions. What do we do about this? You have an anxious attachment style. How can you heal it? Here are some strategies, because you can heal this. You can move towards what's called earned secure attachment. First, you want to identify your triggers. And then when you identify those triggers, ask yourself, what do I think in those moments? And when I think that, what do I feel? You really want to understand the underlying feelings. And while it may happen in lots of different situations, a lot of times there's similar underlying feelings. I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm alone, whatever it is, you want to understand those feelings, because from that, you want to create some self-soothing techniques, some mantras, some things to help coach yourself, or what's called reparent yourself, through those moments, those things that the little version of you, the younger version of yourself, would have wanted to hear in those moments when you were scared. You're safe, you're loved, whatever it is. So when you know what those underlying feelings are, you can curate more appropriate coping skills in those moments. So you want to have those self-soothing techniques that come up when you're triggered and you're feeling anxious, so you can calm yourself and come back to the present moment. Because a lot of times that stuff that gets triggered is past stuff that's coming in and kind of swooping you away from the moment. So you want to be able to bring yourself to the present and keep yourself calm. Something else you want to recognize in these moments, that your feelings are always valid. Because a lot of times somebody with an anxious attachment style will pair up with somebody with an avoidant attachment style, which reinforces the belief, my feelings don't matter, I'm not lovable, or whatever it is. So you want to validate for yourself. Your feelings are valid, but feelings are not facts. So just because you're feeling alone or you're feeling abandoned doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. So this can be a helpful reality check for you in that moment, to validate my feelings valid. It's okay to feel this way. And let me check in on how real this is. Is this something that's happening now in the moment, or am I getting swept away to past stuff? Because you want to be able to deal with what's happening now rather than letting that old stuff come in. And it can be hard to distinguish initially. I kind of liken it to like a huge wave coming crashing over you, and you're trying to find your bearings and figure out which way is up. So reminding yourself of these mantras that you have, reminding yourself that your feelings are valid, but not necessarily facts, can help kind of bring you back to the present to help you sort through all of this. In addition to self-soothing techniques, you also want to be able to reach out and turn to a partner or a loved one. It can be really healing for your attachment style to be able to turn to somebody and share these deeper, more vulnerable emotions, to have them validate you and be there with you. That is incredibly healing. So if you have a partner, share these deeper, more vulnerable feelings with them to help create that sense of security. And then also being able to turn to them and ask for that reassurance and say, hey, I'm feeling a little insecure right now. Can you hold me? Can you tell me you love me? Because again, that is that healing process of I'm sharing this vulnerable thing and you're actually here for me. I'm able to share my needs and you're able to meet me and support me in this. It is incredibly healing. That's your quick and dirty of an anxious attachment style. Let me know if you're going to use any of these strategies or if anything was helpful or if you have any questions.